Far Cry is one of the cornerstones of this industry, and it's got a new face this time around, Montana. We're talking about violence, cults, backcountry, and rural America. But will it win us over once again with Far Cry? Far Cry 5 is coming out soon, and I'm sure there's a lot of very excited people eagerly awaiting its release. But there's a whole other subset of people out there that are speaking out regarding Far Cry 5's most glaring public concern, that it's simply not going to be much different than the last 3 games. Many people are calling it Far Cry 3.2, as it reminds very much of Far Cry 4, which played nearly identical to Far Cry 3. But I think there's a lot more to the story of the Far Cry situation than that. The original Far Cry came out in 2004, which would make it a damn near 15-year-old game at this point. Unlike many popular AAA games released today, Far Cry wasn't a game that was in the spotlight. However, it was still obviously a success that would lead to Far Cry becoming a very much household name. Back in those days, and I say that with fondness, the gaming population wasn't as huge as it is today, so when the game sold 750,000 units within its first 4 months, it was actually pretty good for being a new IP. So less attention, but still great sales performance in relativity, enough to push Ubisoft to make another Far Cry game. Fast forward 15 years, and we have Far Cry 5 coming out next month. Far Cry has come a long way since the story of Jack Carver and that beautiful tropical archipelago of the first game. Far Cry games are beautiful, rich, maybe not too much varied, but they do play good and they feel good, and their production values are incredibly high. They are the epitome of the AAA game in 2018, high quality, but very much expected gameplay. When you look back at each game, you'll definitely know it's Far Cry. The Far Cry 5 situation is that, to the hardcore market, it may just be doing the same thing that the franchise has been doing the past 10 years. A few tweaks here and there and a few new guns are nice and all, but when broken down to the fundamentals of how you play the video game, you have to ask the questions. Have I played this game before? And when is Far Cry gonna run out of steam? The Far Cry formula, as I like to call it, focuses on these elements. A beautiful open world with a brand new setting each game, a collectathon crafting system driven by killing monsters and gathering materials from the world, a giant world map with absolutely too many icons on it, a great deal of play choice from stealth to going guns blazing, fast travel, wingsuits and vehicles to speed around the map, a story that is dependent on, hopefully, an interesting and present villain, and the follow me quest arrow. If you take those 7 things and look back through time at Far Cry, you will find them in pretty much every single Far Cry game after the original. Far Cry 2 had this kind of choose-your-own-adventure experience. Given its larger map size than the original, you could pretty much do anything you want and go anywhere, especially with the outpost system and the buddy system in place. Africa was yours to explore, and most people I'm sure messed around for dozens of hours before stumbling their way back to finish the main campaign. Far Cry 3 took this mold and added Voss, who was an incredible villain who added a certain twisted evilness to the narrative. It was a story full of danger and excitement and chilling theatrics, all possible with the performance of Voss. He made you want to keep playing, and Ubisoft definitely realized this. 2 years later, Far Cry 4 capitalized on this formula once again. It brought these concepts to the very mountainous and green lush world of Kyrat and replaced Voss with pagan men. Pagan was fantastic too, but you gotta ask yourself, what else did Far Cry 4 really do that was actually new? It added a gyrocopter. I'm not hating on Far Cry 4 as a game because I actually love it. It actually feels really great and the shooting was fantastic, but as an advancement to the franchise, I just didn't see enough change in the 2-year development process to get me excited on more than just a surface level run around and have fun, stupid fun kind of game. Today the concern is that this trend has continued with Far Cry 5. You can see the issue here. People are worried that this repetition has washed away their excitement for a series that they once loved. Having played the game multiple times at conventions, I'm worried too. Many of the guns feel the same, the bow looks the same, the gameplay pretty much identical, even the detection meters look the same. Thankfully, the allure of a Far Cry game is how Ubisoft takes these components, even though they're not new, and molds them into something that's greater than the sum of its parts. There's a sensation of freedom, I guess, and exploration in these games that I find very compelling, and when you add in the beauty of the world, the scale of it, and the clean AAA mechanics, you can often find some very fun gameplay experiences with Far Cry. But on the same token, is that what people want today? The same experience, just with a different paint job. That's the Far Cry situation for many. I love the idea of what a Far Cry game represents, but I also want new things from it too, like many people. I don't like that sense of familiarity, this flow of incredible short-term fun meshed with outdated, predictable, repeat gameplay. Because when you step out into the world of a Far Cry game after the initial cutscenes, you know what to expect. You may go anywhere and you may do anything. You've got a quest log that will point you to the main conflict, but you are absolutely free to ignore it and delve into the various side content that the game has waiting for you. Far Cry loves giving you this agency and making you feel cool with just how much stuff you can do or carnage you can dish out. The problem being that often a very huge amount of ludonarrative dissonance, and yes, I'm cringing saying this word once again, results. The experience of many Far Cry games are often hot and cold, where you feel like a total superhuman badass capable of rampaging around the map, killing anything and everything you see. The silliness is what many people love about this game, but it can also make other people roll their eyes, especially if there's no challenge or sense of realism inside the actual game. To combat this, Far Cry 5 is bringing back the recruitment system, aka the buddy system, kind of, from Far Cry 2, where you're going to have to be looking for different characters, recruiting them, and talking to them to grab quests or discover what he or she wants or needs to be done. You'll gain allies, and it looks like there's going to be less hand-holding in Far Cry 5, or so they say, and those people actually might help you out in combat if you go down as they did in Far Cry 2. Animals are back as well, and you can tame them and interact with them as you have done before many times. Unfortunately, I've pretty much hit on every single element that's going to be in Far Cry 5, or so we know, and nothing is really new outside of the ability to fish. Fishing sounds cool, but I mean, is that enough for today's demanding audiences, where a successful, albeit routine game is falling back on the same? I believe the success of Far Cry 5 is going to rest with what it does best, delivering a well-crafted, character-driven story in its brand new setting of Montana. Far Cry 5 is in a tough situation because if it ain't broke, why fix it? People love Far Cry, and people love open world games even more. I think if Far Cry nails its story and its playable content, I believe it's going to be a success for a lot of different people. At this point, some amount of acceptance is just required on behalf of Far Cry, that the mold that holds it in place through time is something that will probably never be broken down. You know, I just hope this is not the case though, because Ubisoft did a great job with Assassin's Creed Origins and overturning the fundamentals of what made Assassin's Creed a great series. And I know Ubisoft can do this because, well, Far Cry Blood Dragon is a thing. So does the Far Cry series need innovation, and will Far Cry 5 actually bring it? Or maybe a better question, does it even have to? It's the Far Cry 5 situation, a question of innovation versus satisfying the giant population of Far Cry players out there.